All right, welcome everyone that's here to learn photography, Photoshop, Lightroom, and etc. So over the next coming months, I will be posting videos with short, quick tutorials. So this is a new channel for me, and I'm going to take what I've learned in my other channel and apply it to this channel. So I'm going to try to make quicker, shorter videos to the point, but with some information. Remember, I am a photography professor. I teach photography in college, and I need to have some information with all videos because my students use these videos as supplemental materials. So I don't use books in the classroom because they're usually outdated and not that great. Today, we're going to take a look at what do I need to do to set up Photoshop to run and to get started in it. And so there's a couple of things. First, to go into the preferences and change a few things. Look, I'm not going to go over everything because it's not that important, and 99% of the people in the world don't care. The next thing we're going to do is just the layout or the look of the program. So we have these panels and windows and all this stuff, and nobody knows what it means. So I'm going to show you how to organize it so that your workflow is going to be more efficient for what we're going to be learning in this program. Next, on the left side of the screen, you'll see there's a long, skinny toolbar. And yeah, I don't use all the tools, and most likely you won't use all the tools. So I'm going to show you how to customize and set that up so it's more efficient when you start learning Adobe Photoshop. And last of all, we're going to set up Adobe Camera Raw as well and just get some basic color management settings for Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop to get you going. We're actually going to learn in the next video Adobe Camera Raw first because everybody should be shooting RAW files. What Adobe Camera Raw does, and this is also in the Lightroom Develop module because they're the exact same program, is when you have a raw image, Photoshop natively can't use it. So what we need to do is go through Adobe Camera Raw to convert it into a working file that Photoshop can understand. And Adobe Camera Raw over the years has become super sophisticated, and you'll be surprised that a lot of basic editing not could be done, but should be done in Adobe Camera Raw. Let's get started and take a look over here at Adobe Photoshop. So I've opened this up and I just have this simple photo. And if your photo is teeny tiny like this and you're unhappy with that, the first quick key that you're going to learn here is Command 0. And that would be Control 0 on a PC. And that will basically just fill the screen with your image. We're just going to do a little bit of branding here. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the preferences. And I'm just going to go in here, and I've probably already set some of them up. I'm going to tell you what I changed and give you a little information as to why. For a Mac, and I'm working on a Mac, I will do my best to do the quick keys for a PC as well, and you'll occasionally see them popping up. But I've never used a PC, so I don't know all quick keys. Sometimes I have to look them up. So we're going to go down to Photoshop, and we're going to go to settings, and then we're going to go into general. For some reason, I think on a PC it's under edit, but we're going to go here, settings. You just need to find that and get the first window that we're going to have pop up. And I'm going to move this in a weird spot. Try right there because I know my picture is here, and we're just going to zoom in so we don't at this point need all this other information. So our first window is general, and yeah, guess what? There's nothing that we really need to change in this. So we are good, and we can go ahead and go down to interface. Now, interface is just how it looks. I have this darker, grayer screen, but you could change it to a white one or colors or whatever you want. Just come through here and start playing with stuff. The next thing we have is Workspace. Nothing to change there. Tools, and we got something to change here. And I've probably already changed it. And it's right here. Overscroll naturally will be selected. What this does is if we zoom back out and we see this image here, and I will just hit OK, and because we've got that selected. I'm going to go up here and go to image size. We're going to change this and make it smaller. So we'll make it 200. It's going to make it teeny tiny. I'm going to hit OK. And you can see it, put it up here in this top weird spot. And that's bizarre. I want it to stay in the center. So we'll hit Command Z or Control Z on a PC. That is undo. Something that as you're learning, you're going to use all the time. So let's go back up here to settings. And I think we were in tools. And we've got overscroll. So if I click overscroll off, click OK. Now we go back and do the same thing. Image size, we'll do 250. Is that what I did? And we'll hit OK. And you can see it will zoom, but it puts it in the center of the screen, which is, yeah, where we want it. Okay? Because it makes it easy to either zoom or just hit Command 0. And voila, we're back. Now it's a low quality image. Let's hit Command Z, Command 0. And we're back to where we started. So we'll go back into the settings, into tools, and that's it inside of tools. We're not changing anything. Next, we have history, and there's nothing to change inside of history. Next, we've got file handling. All right, next we have file handling, and in file handling, there's something that I checked. So if we come right up here, you'll notice there's something called Enable Legacy Save As. A couple of years ago, maybe two, Photoshop changed this. So forever, whenever you wanted to save a file of something different or new, you would go File, Save As, all right? And it will allow you to save as a JPEG. Well, they've changed that, and they want you to use Save as a Copy. And what this does is it allows you to not overwrite your image. So I can't stand that because I'm not used to it, and I'm most likely not going to ever overwrite my images on accident. So I have Enable Legacy Save As selected, and all that lets me do is save an image as a JPEG inside Save As instead of having to use Save as a Copy, which I'm not used to using. So that's all I've got there. So we've got export. So I've changed the export to JPEG in a quality of 7, but I don't use the quick export. So there's no sense in doing that. Also, make sure convert to sRGB. So in the world of photography, the web uses the color profile of sRGB, and we'll get more into color spaces and color management later. But you do want to convert that. Performance. All right. And so this is going to vary for everybody because guess what? Everybody's computer is going to have a different amount of internal RAM. And that's random access memory, in which your computer or Photoshop, which is a pig, uses a lot of it to run efficiently. So I have mine set at 70%. If your computer is running slow in general, you might need more memory most likely, but you can control how much it uses. But what's more important, over here on history states, so you'll see right here, we've got history states, and the history is located under my picture, okay? So these panels on the right-hand side can appear by going up here to Window, and then anything that has a little tick mark is already showing on the right-hand side. Anything without a tick mark is not available. So all you need to do is select it. It will give it a tick mark and it will appear on the right-hand side. So history is one of those. And what history lets you do is go back in time. So if you're working on an image and you don't like what you're doing and you want to go back to a certain time, you can just click on that history state. It saves 50. So for me, that's perfectly fine because I don't do overly complex work in general. Now, if you're doing a lot of composite work where you're going to have lots of different adjustments and things that you're doing, you might want to increase that. But when you increase that, you might want to increase your cache amount. It has to store all that information. Cache is just a location on your computer where it saves information that you're using all the time. And it doesn't keep it forever. It will usually delete it in like 30 days or a certain amount of time. So image processing. So image processing is new, and I've already switched these, but it's usually device quicker. So when you're using Photoshop, we now have artificial intelligence, and it makes a lot of selections. And you'd be shocked, but if you're using your computer, the selections aren't as good. It wants to use the cloud. So it goes to the cloud and it's able to reference AI and make better selections. So I've changed everything from device quicker to cloud, from faster to more stable. and this is more stable, and this one is more stable. So I've switched all those. The next thing that we have is scratch disk. So the number one thing that in photography that you should never do is save your photos to your internal hard drive. Okay. Don't save them there. It's going to fill up, and then your computer is going to say scratch disk full. All right. That means your hard drive is full and you have no room to work and use the program. So it's going to make you delete all these files. Buy yourself an external hard drive. If you can get an SSD, that's better because they work way faster. So if you remembered earlier, I told you it saves information in the cache, and it also uses free space to work. Right now, I have my scratch disk space saved on my internal hard drive, but you can see I have other hard drives, and I could easily put that scratch disk space on those. You just want to make sure you're on a faster one. So if you have an SSD instead of an older optical drive, it will work faster. My suggestion, get a secondary external hard drive, save everything there. So that's what scratch disk space is. You need about 100 gigabytes. It's quite large. Cursors, don't change that. Never even tried to change it. So transparency settings. So this is this little thing here, and we'll get into. This image up here is actually a JPEG, but normally I would save it as a PNG. And I want the white part to be translucent. So when you put that on a web page, the white doesn't show, just the black logo. So this shows where you have transparency in the image. Nothing you need to change. Units. So I have mine put to inches, and type, we have points. All right. I could use pixels. I could use centimeters, millimeters. You'll get used to it. Depends on what area of the country you're in as to what you use, but you can set that to whatever you want. I do change my resolution up here to 300 pixels per inch. So this only matters for printing, doesn't matter for the web. But most things that print use 300 pixels per inch, so I switch it. I think natively it's 240. Guides and grids, nothing to change. Plugins, nothing to change. Type, nothing to change. Enhanced controls, I don't have a touch bar, so I don't use that. Technology, previews, yeah, I don't have anything there. And we're done. So I can click OK, and boom, we're back to the panel. So one thing, we're done, okay? So let's go ahead and move on to the next section, and let's change our color management settings. The way color management works is when you have a raw file, nothing's applied to it. We're going to tell it what color space we want our computer to work in. And so I have a link to a blog on John Whitehead Images, and that explains what color management it is. So I'll put that in the description. Let's go up here to edit, and we're going to drop down to color settings, and we'll slide that color settings down here so it's closer to my face. And let's go ahead and change it. I don't know what the defaults are. I couldn't remember, but I know it's sRGB. sRGB is the color space for the web, but it's a smaller color gamut, meaning it supports not as much colors. So we're going to switch to Adobe RGB, which is Adobe, and you'll see 1998. They're trying to get away from 1998 because, yeah, that was a long time ago, but that's the color space. It's larger than sRGB, but not as large as something like ProPhoto. The problem with ProPhoto is it's so large, your eyes can't even see all the colors, and most everybody's monitor is not going to display them anyways. I have a 5K monitor, and it's not going to display them all. We are going to leave CMYK at this, and we're going to change gray to a gray gamma of 2.2. We're just going to leave the spot at a 20% gain. All right. Don't worry if you don't understand this. Eventually you will. And we're going to change all the color management policies. Right now they're off. So even though I've set these, it wouldn't switch it if I open something up in a different color space. So we're going to go convert to working. Convert to working. Convert to working. The reason I don't set CMYK is I don't work in CMYK, and most photographers don't. And then down here, we're going to click this little ask when opening and ask when opening. And what that means is if you open up an image and it doesn't have a color profile or it's in something different, it's going to say, hey, do you want me to switch to Adobe RGB color profile, because that's what you have set as the working one. And we're going to say yes. And the reason is, as you're learning, it's helpful to know what's going on the computer. If it's just doing it in the background, you're not going to remember what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK, and that should save. Just be careful. Every once in a while when you update Photoshop, it wipes those settings out. I have no idea why, but you need to check after every update just to make sure everything's set correctly. We're also going to go up here to Photoshop, and then we're going to go to settings, and we're going to go down here to a camera raw. And so this is Adobe Camera Raw. And I think when you open this up normally, sorry, my mouse has been a little jumpy in general, and you want to drop down to workflow. And you can see I've already changed it, but you want your color space to be there at 16 bits, and you want your bit depth to be 16. Normally it's 8. And so this is the difference. Photoshop works in 8 bits, 16 bits, and 32 bits. In 8 bits, you have 256 shades of gray. In 16 bit, you have 65,400 about. It's not exactly the number. So that's a lot more data. Now look, most cameras don't shoot in 16 bit, but that's all Photoshop lets us work in. So are you going to have 65,000? No, but you might have it in 12 bit or 14 bit. So it's way more information to work with, and that's better. Once again, I have my resolution set at 300, and I'll hit OK, and that's all you need to do. So you're set up when we get to Adobe Camera Raw. All right, let's move on. So let's go to the little toolbar over here. So all the tools that we use inside of Photoshop are over here. And we'll go up here to the lasso tool. And so I've got this, so when you hover over it, it tells you what it is. And you'll notice at the lasso tool right over here, it's got a little L. That's the quick key. So if you just hit L, whatever tool is active here, it's going to go to. And it also has this little teeny tiny drop down arrows. It's a little triangle pointing to the down and to the right. That means there's other tools nested under it. I usually don't like it, but there's some tools I don't use, so I keep them there. If you left click and hold, it pops up and you can see these are the other tools. So if I wanted this tool, I can select that and you can see it changed it. And then I can click on it again and go back up to rectangle. So we're going to change the configuration of this because there's tools that I don't want to use. So I'm going to move those. Now we're going to take them out. That does not mean that they're gone. So we can click on these little 3 dots. It will bring up all the tools that we move out of it. Right now, there aren't any, so it's not showing up. So we're going to go up here to edit, and we're going to go to toolbar. So let me move toolbar over down in here, and okay. So on the left-hand side that we have here is how this is configured. All right. So whenever you see 2 things next to each other like this, they're nested. So you remember all 4 of these things were nested together. All right. If we don't want a tool, we're going to drag it over to here to extra tools. If we want it so it's not nested, we will move it out. So the first one that we're going to use is going to be this selection tool brush, which is brand new. It just came out. So I'm going to drag it out. You can see it turns blue and let go. And so now it's in its own little space because it has this gray space in between it. So it's now out of that. So these 3 are nested, okay? And I can't stand this tool, so I'm going to move the magnetic lasso tool out because I don't use it. I want those 2 nested, that's okay. And then we're going to come down here to the object selection tool. And don't worry, I'll go over later what these do, but we don't want to waste too much time. So we're going to take the object selection tool, which is one I use all the time, and move that out. These 2 are going to stay here. And feel free to do what I'm doing because you can always go back in and change it once you learn how Photoshop works. Because like photographers, painters, drawers, graphic design, everyone's going to use this a little bit differently. So crop tool, all these we're going to keep as is. The frame tool, I'm going to leave that where it is. So eyedropper, color sampler, rule, note. I don't really use these tools, so we're just going to leave those where they are. All right, so next we have, and let me drag this up a little higher, all these tools, and basically these are for retouching your image. I'm going to move all of these out most likely. So remove tool, which is new, healing brush, patch tool, content aware, and red eye tool I don't use. Okay. Oops. Like I did not move them out perfectly. So each one of those is going to be its own tool. So it's going to have its own little spot. You can see over here, they're in their own little spots now. That's how we want that. And we're going to come down here to these. I leave all those together. I think everything else is pretty much good. I'm not going to change anything. I don't use the blur tool, sharpen tool, or the smudge tool. And if I do, they're easy to get access to. So we're just going to go ahead. All that stuff looks good. All this stuff here. And we're good. So once we've done that, though, we're going to save this. So we're going to go over here to Save Preset. If you're like me, every once in a while, Photoshop messes things up and you lose it. So we're going to save this. And you can save this in a document somewhere. It's a TBR file that Photoshop can accidentally delete at some point. So make sure that you save this in more locations than custom toolbar, because that's inside of Adobe Photoshop. But I'll just put my initials and we'll hit OK. All right. They're saying that one already exists. I'll hit replace. We're done. That's because I've already done this before. So that's the toolbars. The last thing over here is the windows, and this is a little funky to get used to using. So up here on the top, see this little double arrow. If you click that, it will open this column. All right. If you click it, it will close it and show you just the icon. So if you don't know the icon, what's most likely you don't, you're not going to know what the tool is. So it's closed up right here. And the reason you can open and close stuff is not everybody's working on a 27-inch iMac. Some people might be working on small 14-inch Mac tops, and those are small, and this takes up a lot of space. If you do that, buying like a cheap $100 monitor and hooking it up at home is great, because you can actually move all these toolbars to there. So have your image here and the toolbars on a cheaper monitor. I used to do that. But we're going to open these up. So I usually open up the first two and I just have actions here, and that's closed. And just like I said before, all these little tabs are under window. So anything that we see a tick mark is showing over here right now. Okay. And if we come over here to this little icon, we have some presets. So right now we're under essentials, right? We're going to move to photography because I'm a photographer, and that's basically the type of tutorials I'm teaching. So this will better set up these windows for a photographer. I like to have my windows set up in a particular way, okay? And it looks like it's pretty much already set up. All right, so in the photography workspace, it's already got it set up how I want it set up. So let's go to something different like essentials. And let me just show you how this works. So yours might be set up a little bit different. So we have tabs. So there's paths, channels, and layers. Each one of these is a tab. So when you click on it, it's active. So now it's showing the channels. That's channels, paths. If you want to get rid of one of these, and we want to get rid of paths, you come over here to this hamburger menu and you click on that. If you just want to get rid of paths, you would hit close and it gets rid of paths. If you want to get rid of everything, layers and channels, which we don't, you would come back over here, click on the same thing and hit close tab group, and that would get rid of everything. As you can see, now both of those are gone. But I want layers, so we're going to come back over here to window, and we're going to go to layers, and now it's put layers up. And we've got channels, which I don't want, so I'm going to hit close. All right, and that gets rid of it. So layers is probably the most functional thing that we're going to use. So I have that set up large. If you have a tab, and so right now you can't see the history tab, but it's behind my picture, but we have this info tab. Let's say I wanted the info tab up here with properties. If I move it next to it, see how it turns blue? It circles the whole box. That means it's going to go in as a tab. And it moved it way down here. I don't know why I did that, but we don't want that. If you want properties to be in its own, we move it out. And now you see there's a blue line. That's going to be put it in between info and the one above. If you want to change the size of these, like I don't need all this extra information because I'm not using it. So I can come down here and see how my cursor changes from the arrow to the double arrow. I can left click and drag up And that's actually all I want showing for right now. There's two different versions of this. You can click over here and it shows it like that. This is easier for tutorials because it has the words and tells you what you're doing. So properties, I want it to be quite large, so we're going to leave that. The info panel is super helpful. And by default, it doesn't come set up like this. I think it's CMYK actual color. So to change these, I have mine at RGB. And if you see there's a little K that stands for black or grayscale. You click on this little icon and it comes up and we want grayscale. Okay, that's super important. So the way I have mine set up is history here, layers here, adjustments here, properties here. And this is actions, which I don't have any actions because Photoshop was so kind to delete them all in an update. This is my setup. And once you move these windows around and set things up, oh, if you wanted to create a new column, you just drag it out and then you get a vertical line and you can see it created a new one, but we don't want that. We want it up here again and we're back to where it goes. Then you can come up here, and this is important. We're going to go to New Workspace. And if you remember, we created a toolbar, but if you change your menus or your keyboard shortcuts, which I do change sometimes, you can click it so it saves everything as one. So I could just put JCW Shutterbug, right? And hit save. And boom, just like that, it's saving that setup. Sometimes I save a couple, like when I work with type, I have some different windows open. And so you might see me having like multiple custom setups here. And so that's how you set up the windows inside of Photoshop. Well, that's it for the very first tutorial here. If you found this video helpful and could give me a thumbs up, that would be great. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you can share this with your friends, that would be wonderful. If you ever have comments and questions, you can leave those below. I do my best to answer those. Thanks for watching.